Group 6 Podcast. Conspiracies, mysteries, cover-ups, cryptids. We talk about anything and everything, as long as it's interesting. For more info, any questions, or if you have some spicy info for us to talk about, contact us at group6show@hotmail.com.
So, we've been hearing all about the show To Catch a Predator. The host of that show apparently is cooking up something new, isn't he?
It seems so. I mean, I see on his Facebook and Twitter right here, Chris Hansen. So you can find him on Twitter at Chris Hansen. Yeah, very famous, you know. Why don't you take a seat right there, John? What are you doing here? You're...
Well, I was just... I'm innocent, 15-year-old girl. But
okay. It says right here that she didn't say she was 15. She said she was 13.
Oh, I can't read very well without my glasses. Something happens, right? Yeah.
What are you doing here? Did you bring any condoms with you?
I always figure, the younger they get, the less chance they have of venereal diseases.
I mean, in all seriousness, these guys are fucking creeps.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Even though this is sketchy legally, no one's going to feel sorry for them because he's a fucking pedophile. I mean,
some of them are real sad excuses. One guy on the show was like, oh, my mom's going to take my computer away from me. And he looked about 50.
Oh, God.
I forget how old he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Chris Hansen, he's the big figure. He goes in there, Sometimes they have, like, iced tea or cookies or something. Did you try the cookies?
Do you know what? Right? This is the ultimate fantasy, I think, of a lot of people, to be that kind of like schadenfreude guy just sitting there on the side, or girl sitting there on the side, not really interfering with anything, but just like, holy shit, I'm glad I'm not you. I don't know.
That's what we get to be when we watch the show.
Oh, exactly.
So getting back to this, he has the hashtag Hansen v Predator. So I'm thinking, man, this is just my opinion, there could be a comeback to Chris Hansen. To Catch a Predator. Maybe they're bringing it back. I mean, he's not with Dateline NBC anymore ever since his affair came out, I guess. So maybe somebody else is doing this. Could it be Netflix or something?
Possibly, yeah. I would definitely see that as a Netflix show because it's like a lot of the internet shows are coming out now for it. It's got a very specific market. It's like reality, but because it's To Catch a Predator, we don't judge it as much as Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think this is a much worthwhile show. It should have ended just because of what that incident with the politician who ended up trolling on the line. They did stake out his house because he didn't show up at the decoy house. I think the guy ended up shooting himself, and you can hear the gunshot on
Sure, yeah.
Like they got in a lot of shit for that.
Yeah.
What do you think, John? Do you think maybe they went a little too far? I mean.
Well, I mean, I think the whole point of this is that it goes too far. So it would make sense that people posing it would, meet them halfway, as it were. I think it's the prerogative of politicians and all these other people to react the way that they are. And it's also the prerogative of the people on their show to have that personality, the kind of person that would go out there and set up the show in the first place. Like, someone like that isn't, a straight-laced person. There's somebody who kind of enjoys messing things up. I almost see it as like a vigilante kind of thing. What we were talking about Batman the other day. Yeah. He's not necessarily a good guy himself. He's like a guy with a kind of a seamy side to him that likes going out catching guys that are worse than him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that was really a groundbreaking show, especially in the world of journalism, because you don't see journalists doing that. You see them doing exposés on stuff like that, but this was a really, really great show.
Do you know what? journalism has a bad record. It really does, for being dishonest, for being seamy and treacherous, but they actually have a really strict code of ethics that they try to adhere to. I know everyone's going to laugh at that, but I mean, I think that people don't appreciate the small number of legitimate journalists still trying to, hold to those old principles of objectivity and telling, the facts as they are.
I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. That's the thing about this show. I mean, everything's honest. You have the chat logs from when it happens.
Yeah.
Chris Hansen's just laying it all on the line, and he doesn't pull any punches. He'll read it exactly. They'll bleep everything out, I mean,
you get to learn how fucked the world is through people like this.
Yeah, Chris Hansen really does eye-opening things. He's done all those exposés on, like, the child prostitution in the Philippines. Then recently after that, he did, like, scammers, thieves, and then he did weird stuff like people who are vampires, like they'll drink real blood and they'll meet people online to do that. And
that's not really hurting anybody.
But it's just something to all he did was ask them questions. It wasn't like the best parts of any of those is when he's just like, I'm Chris Hansen from Dateline NBC, and we're doing We're doing a show on internet predators, and they just some guys will just be like, oh, put his head in his shirt. But that show really escalated when it started out. It was just showing them on the TV, and then they were free to go on their way. Soon after, it evolved to they'd have whatever police from that county or whatever waiting for the guys when they walk out the door.
Oh, sure.
I mean, that was great just to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes they know, and sometimes they don't know what's going to happen.
It's that Schadenfreude. It's like, oh my God, who's going to open the door? And you know that predator's heart is just pounding at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and that's what makes people get riveted to the show.
He's like, am I free to go? He's like, yeah, you're free to go. And he's like, am I going to jail? That's not for me to decide. I can't do a good Chris Hansen, but that's for me to decide.
That's a very creepy Chris Hansen, but he tries to be. In all fairness, that's kind of what you want him to be when facing up.
I don't know. I think he seems like a really nice guy to talk to. Like at least in interviews, because I watched his interview on the Opie and Anthony show, and he was really Anthony would do his Chris Hansen impression. He's like, oh, why don't you take a seat right there?
Yeah.
So what are you doing here?
Nice.
I came to talk to you. And the funny thing is, connecting to that show, one of the guys he caught was an Opie and Anthony fan. He's like, I heard you on Opie and Anthony. It was real funny.
Well, that's really interesting, because Opie and Anthony, they're embroiled in their own little scandal. Maybe not as bad as people that they catch in their show.
Well, it's just Anthony. I mean, you can say what you want about that. I don't want to even go into it. I kind of support his side of it. Maybe they shouldn't have gotten too much into his Twitter rant, but whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah,
it is what it is. He's not going to be back on Sirius, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard. It's hard when you get people who are talented and they're so funny and they offer so much to the entertainment world. And then they have reprehensible views.
They screw up a little bit. Yeah, that's the thing. You can't really get into what Anthony does and all that and what he talks about. But sometimes he's dead on, really, and that's what I admire. And he can be funny.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's what I would miss most about the show.
Yeah.
Because now it's just Opie and Jim Norton. But I think at the same time, I'm happy for Jim that now he's on there as a name. It's Opie and Jim Norton now.
Yeah.
It used to be he was just the third guy.
Yeah.
But now, I'm happy about that because he's a very talented comic.
Oh, for sure. But sometimes it's the charisma. I mean, the Opie and Anthony show, that's been going on for a while, and it's them. That's like splitting up Simon and Garfunkel. I know they kind of did, and they would do their own things by themselves.
Yeah,
but like Simon or Garfunkel with someone else, it's never going to be the same thing as Simon and Garfunkel.
They were really like a good pair, like Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, or like Lennon and McCartney of radio.
Sure.
I mean, you can say what you want about the whole dispute between them and Howard Stern. I mean, I don't want to. Whatever. I would always pick them. I think they're.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just biased because
I thought that whole thing was funny, just because you can't take anything that any of them says very seriously, can you?
No, but at the same time, when it gets down to serious stuff too, they're very good about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you should listen to somebody actually kept a show and put it back on YouTube a few years later, the day of 9/11.
Okay.
And once it happened, they went right into serious mode. They were taking calls. They had to go to a new location, but they were taking calls. They were listening to people. And
Well, Howard Stern's very good at pulling out serious exactly when he wants to, and then like kind of shocking it with the way he does it, like zeroing in.
I mean, I remember listening to Howard because they have audio from that day from Howard as well. I mean,
yeah.
because I think that they were still confused what was going on, what kind of plane it was, and he made a few like just odd off-color remarks like, "Oh, this is worse than the time Pamela Anderson turned me down" or something.
Oh gosh.
I'd have to listen to it again, so don't quote me. I mean, I don't want to slander the guy.
He was saying like that was for a long time. You couldn't make any jokes about it. Like 10 years later, you couldn't make any jokes. But I think now we're coming to the point where it's kind of an event in history. But you know, I didn't know personally, but my cousins met someone who lived like 2 blocks away, couldn't speak for 2 months after the attacks. Like couldn't like vocalize. Or make anything like that. You know, the whole thing just kind of shattered her. I do think that a lot of the taboos around that kind of thing come from America feeling insulated. Like, that could happen in another country, and it would still mess them up. But I think it messed up America worse because they thought it couldn't happen to them.
Yeah.
If it makes, and I'm not saying the whole thing wasn't tragic.
That was a very surprising day. Like, really, like this can happen. Somebody can hijack planes in America and fly them into the biggest city in the world and crash the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
I mean, just a nuts day, and it's really not. I don't think it's the right time for us to go into the conspiracy theories side, although some of them are quite compelling. I mean, I don't want to go like Jesse Ventura again.
Well, I'm sure he'll have some thoughts on the subject.
Oh, he has.
Oh, does he?
I mean, I just don't want to get into it right now.
Right.
I mean, talking about 9/11 as a day that we thought couldn't happen.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Definitely a day we thought couldn't happen. Don't want to go into the whole bones behind it, but I mean.
Well, yeah, no, I don't even care, who did it. I'm not saying I don't care, but like
really,
from the point of view of the tragedy.
It happened. We ended up in a war, and it was tragic.
Yes.
And 3,000 people plus died.
Yeah.
Including a few Canadians.
Sure.
I mean, what a piss off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and for that matter, probably even some people who would be sympathetic to a lot of the causes that Al-Qaeda was claiming to speak for. This is the irony of it all. Like, I'm not saying that, everyone who died in that building was a great person, but like they didn't care one way or the other. Like I don't even think that for people like that it's even about ideology anymore. I think that like it's just it's some weird attempt to have your name go down in history, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
The Magnificent 19. That's what Chowdhury.
Muhammad Atta.
He's funny.
Muhammad Atta is the name you hear a lot related to 9/11. He's one of the guys who took the planes.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched 0 Hour. Have you watched the documentary series 0 Hour?
No, I don't know.
If you have Netflix, check it out because it's like basically the hours and minutes leading up to events, and they have one where it's that particular plane that Muhammad Atta took over.
Right. Interesting.
And then they also have Columbine.
Oh, is it interesting?
I mean, Columbine was really.
Well, that's fascinating psychologically, isn't it? Like, because they've got their diaries and all that stuff. They can trace.
They have the diaries, the video diaries. Like, there was a lot of real footage of them interspersed with reenactments, and I got to say, the guys acting as those two. I mean, they did a really good job for a documentary show.
Yeah.
They did a really good job, really capturing their turmoil. Like, I mean, they had a lot of turmoil. Obviously, it's unfortunate that it came down to that. I don't want to sympathize with them, really, but at the same time, you got to think they were outcasts. I mean, if they'd gotten the proper help sooner, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know what? I think that as unhinged as they were, very often people are not born like that.
No,
they're made to be unhinged.
They're not born. That's the big thing you got to think. A lot of people, bad people aren't born; they're made. Even Adolf Hitler. I mean,
Sure, because even if somebody has traits that predispose them to being a sociopathic killer, it's not smart to kill. It's not something that most people enjoy, even if their brain is fucked up. Like the way that kind of massacre carries itself out, it needs to be triggered by something, because it's just not. I guess what I'm saying is that humans aren't really born to kill, even if they're a kind of person with an unempathetic kind of brain that's on edge. Because, you know, if for no other reason, then it's not smart to most of the time. So frankly, I do think that in basically every case, killers are made and not born.
Yeah, well, of course, there's some exceptions. I couldn't name some, but I'm sure there are.
Yeah, sure. You know, people who are just naturally, they'll swing into violence at anything. But like
I mean, that's just one of a base instinct, really.
Oh, definitely.
Is for violence to
Yeah.
kick in when you need it.
Sure. I mean, I guess I should rephrase it. It's not that humans don't ever even enjoy killing. I mean, if you look at the psychology of war, or watching a war movie and getting pumped up at a dramatic speech, that's interesting, because that actually says something about a part of human psychology that's mostly buried, but it comes out in places like that. And when that was the norm in tribal societies, you know, it's hard for us to imagine the way it is right now. But like, think of codes of honor when people would kill each other out of nothing in the past. Like, people just don't do that anymore.
No.
You know, like, so we've suppressed a lot of these impulses for the better. But I think that, you know, they could have come out, and so you're right in that sense. It might be natural, but like, not to the point where it's like a crazy murderous rampage that's triggered by nothing. Basically, everything needs a trigger, and even people with brains that are like psychopathic and on edge, like, even they need a trigger. And I think they've shown that, like, even people with those brains, if they're raised in an environment where they had lots of love as a kid, and they felt that the world was a place that they could trust, they're not going to turn cynical and jaded and bitter, and they're not going to lash out in those ways. I think they've actually found that. It's interesting. I know if his name is Michael Fallon. I think that's his name. You know, he says, you know, he's a psychopath, and he didn't know it, because he looked at his brain, they scanned it, and they were like, wow, this is the brain of a psychopath. I have the brain of a murderer. And he told his family, and they were like, well, yeah, we've been trying to tell you this for years, really. But it was like he was a pro-social psychopath because he had the proper nurturing at the right part of his life. So he wasn't a crazy killer, you know.
So he's just, you know, I'm a psychopath, but, you know,
and a law-abiding one.
I was brought up in a way that made me not
sure
act out on it, maybe.
Yeah, no, not only not act out in it, but like, he didn't like it when people. He had a black and white sense of morality when he was younger, which is interesting. It's like one thing or the other, but like probably because he didn't have the natural empathy to kind of say, well, this is the kind of thing that is good. This is the kind of thing that is bad. I find that, you know, a lot of people with low empathy, they don't really understand, like I mean, I don't want to bring names into any of this, but I know some people that I think, you know, they kind of have no soul, but they try and convince me that they're good by, you know, stating these over-the-top things that no normal human would do. What they don't understand is it's not that normal humans are, like, overly, you know, generous. It's that, like, they feel bad when they hurt others. And this is the difference. A psychopath doesn't feel bad when they hurt other people. They don't have that sense of, like, you're doing something bad, and then you imagine an angry fantasy where you're like, oh, but I'd feel horrible if I did that. But I honestly think that's the main difference, really, between a psychopath and a non-psychopath. It's just like they don't have guilt, I think.
Yeah. And that really does. That's the game changer for that. Like,
well, they have guilt, but it's like it's guilt they got caught. It's not the guilt that you'd feel just internally. Like, they wouldn't turn themselves in unless they were afraid that they'd get caught. Whereas somebody else who just, like, had a snap of anger and killed somebody, they might not be able to live with themselves for the rest of their life.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing if somebody just snaps and does that. That's a lot of people, you know, a lot of people brought up on manslaughter or like that.
Sure. Or like they run over a kid with their car. Like could you imagine
or
running?
A crime of passion, or you know, or even justifiable homicide.
Sure.
That can really eat somebody up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to really pick the brain of Bernie Getz. You know, the subway shooter who shot the guys who were about to mug him.
Oh, right. Yeah, that will be interesting.
Really, in the moment, he said to one of them, "Oh, you don't look so bad. Here's another, or something like that.
Holy shit.
Maybe he was just angry or pissed off, but really, he got a probation for it. You weren't supposed to have a gun, so
Yeah.
he got a probation for it. I mean, but now, last I heard of him was on the Opie and Anthony show. We're coming back to that again. He was on the Opie and Anthony show. But yeah, it's just weird. There's fight or flight, and he happened to have a gun.
Yeah.
But I don't know that kind of comment. You don't look so good. Here's another. What is that like? I mean, some people are thrown into disillusionment, and that happens. But it seems in the moment. I think he had a gun on him because there was heavy muggings in the area, even though it was illegal. But just that comment strikes me as something. What do you make of it?
Oh, well, I think that's the classic example of someone going too far. When somebody is hit by something that happens to them, something traumatic, it's like, I can't believe that things like this happen in the world. I can't believe it. And when people get into that mode, they start to spin. They say these ridiculous over-the-top things that could get them into a lot of trouble. I think it's one of those moments. Like, even if it's at the worst place, the worst time.
Yeah, and it's funny because people really related that to the Death Wish movies a lot.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
I mean, now that's way, way too far, but I think that's the whole point of the movie and the book, really.
Oh, there's a book. I didn't know there was a book.
It was based on a book, yeah, and it's a lot more psychological in the way. Because,
Really?
he lost his wife, and his daughter's just completely fucked because of the assault.
Yeah.
I mean, he just begins to... He was a pacifist, the character. But he begins to lose that pacifism, and he decides for himself that he's gonna try to sate his thirst for vengeance some way.
I wonder if that's almost in the personality of like a black and white thinker. It's like it's either pacifism or it's vigilantism.
And he makes that total 180.
Yeah, it's like something snapped in him. It's like, I can't believe that people are like this. Or it's like he wants a world where everyone can trust each other. And that can only happen when there's no bad people in the world. And then that
movie really...
That can lead to dangerous places.
I haven't read much of the book. I've read about it, but I've watched the movie several times. The first one, Charles Bronson, I think, really nailed that with a lot of subtlety. It took a lot of subtlety. This is a guy who has a lot of inner turmoil.
Yes.
I mean, on the outside, he's like this really bleeding heart liberal pacifist, you know.
Yeah.
Well, maybe some of these...
But that's why he turned. It was because he hated to see people taking advantage of those that he loved. And
maybe some of... First, he thinks maybe some of these people do need help. That's why they're mugging.
Sure.
But as soon as it happens to him and his family, he's like, why can't the cops do anything about it? Why haven't they found anybody? I mean...
And then the trust in the system is broken.
The trust in the system is broken, exactly. And it makes a turning point when he goes to Arizona to meet this developer. And they're going to do a land deal because he's an architect. Yeah. He takes him to this Wild West show. And then I think that sparks something in him, like the lawlessness and, the way they just use their guns to solve their problems. Yeah. I mean, so then he finds out he gets a gun as a gift from this guy. And he just opens up and, there's a gun. So he takes it with him. And a guy comes and mugs him and he shoots him. At first, he's very appalled at what he does. He goes home and throws up and then goes out again, shoots a couple more muggers. Sure. I mean, it just ends up culminating. And the cops have this dilemma. Yeah. Everybody's on his side. The city is on his side. Yeah. So the one detective in charge, eventually everything catches up to Charles Bronson's character, Paul. He ends up getting shot and ends up in the hospital. So this is great. The detective that's in charge, he brings him his gun. He says, "I'm going to throw this in the river, and we're not going to do anything. But you have to leave New York City. You can't come back." Now, you probably would not happen in real life. I mean, he probably would get some kind of charges. Mm-hmm. But at this point, they were worried about their public image of themselves. because they were all for what he was doing. They thought he was cleaning up the city.
Yeah.
Whereas the fact is, it's still a crime. It's still pretty much murder.
Well, I mean, it's not even whether he was doing something good or bad, or whether he was killing people. It's that you can't have just anyone saying, "I'm going to be the arbiter of justice." That's what the problem with it is, because then suddenly everyone's like a vigilante, and it turns into original human society, which, getting back to that, like early tribal society, what that was like was, it was a mafioso society.
Yeah.
If somebody did something bad, they would get revenge and they'd just kill that person. So everyone was their own unit. Everyone loved each other like a brother or sister. Like, everyone was very tight usually in their tribe. But when something happened from a member of another tribe, that interdependence had to happen, and they'd go and they'd get revenge in the whole tribe, and they'd kill all of them because they knew that if there was one left alive, they would take revenge. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Mongol, but there was, at the beginning of the code, you know, the Genghis Khan's character is about to be killed. Genghis Khan's character, I'm acting as if Genghis Khan was the actor. Genghis Khan will be starring as himself. Well, anyway, he was, spared, and there was some law that they had that, Mongols couldn't kill children, so they chained him up and they were feeding him and stuff like that, because they were like, he's got to grow so we can kill him. Because they had some understanding of human biology.
That seems to me like complete lawlessness.
Pretty close to it, because you couldn't have law because there was nothing for law to be based on. All that was the law within the tribe. But the tribes themselves, they were just a bunch of little nations at war. And sometimes they were at peace too.
I think though, the best thing about Death Wish is that he never runs into the muggers that personally did it to his family.
Yeah.
He never does. He just goes and projects it to any other mugger on the street. Maybe that first kill was a bit justified because it was him being threatened himself.
Yeah.
But the second time, somebody else is getting mugged and he steps in and shoots. Then he starts, making himself look like because he's an architect. He's a bit well-to-do. He's got a nice penthouse.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he makes it obvious that he's money, so he goes to some of the, dingier spots and lures muggers. That's the point where it's like, is this guy really doing the right thing? No. Maybe to look out for others or to protect yourself, yeah, then it's sort of justified. But it went to the point where he started looking for trouble.
Yeah.
And it ended up with him being shot and kicked out of New York. Basically.
Yeah.
The second movie is all right. He's in Los Angeles. Not as good as the first, but it's about on par. Just don't go into the other three sequels, because then it's just ridiculous. Have you seen any of the other ones?
No, I haven't.
You've seen the first one, though?
I have seen the first one, yeah.
First one's great. Second one?
No. That was the only one.
At least watch.
Well, because it was a bit of an intriguing thing for me, because there's that famous Jeff Goldblum scene where he kills rich cunts.
Back to Opie and Anthony. That's a great sound clip that they use.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
They even played that when he did an interview with them, and he's like, "Oh, I forgot all about that."
Sure you did. Coming back to haunt you, Jeff. Your first role. That's so funny that they cast him as like a badass.
Not only is it Jeff Goldblum's first roles, but in the second instance where Bronson kills a couple muggers that are attacking a guy, one of them is Denzel Washington.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I did not know that.
Denzel Washington.
Wow.
Now in the second one, the second one's a little bit different, even though it's weird to have lightning strike twice. He's living with his he's living in the city. He's got a housekeeper, a girlfriend who works in the radio journalism, and his daughter is still in therapy, but she's still, catatonic.
Right.
She can't talk. She's, a bit more emotional. She's starting to recover. You get the sense that she's on her way to coming back. Like, she can, she knows what's going on. But this time he gets mugged. And the guys take his wallet. Yeah. This is how they get to his home this time. But this time he sees them. And then that one, he tracks them all down one by one. So that's how it's different. It's just depending on what version you watch, it's really, really graphic. Like
Yeah.
first they rape the housekeeper.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember that scene.
So
Was this from the second one?
yeah, from the second. one.
Oh, I thought it was from the first one.
No, the first one you don't see a lot. You see.
Oh no,
you see him
that's
beat them up.
that's not the housekeeper. That's the old woman, right?
No, it's his wife and his daughter in the first one.
Oh, okay.
But in the second one, his housekeeper, and then they kidnap his daughter.
I don't remember the movie too well. It seemed to be just like a chain of events that were all kind of similar.
Yeah, the first two are quite similar. That's why you might mix them up. In the second one, they assault the housekeeper.
I don't think I've ever seen the second one.
Yeah, one of the muggers in the second one is Lawrence Fishburne.
All of these actors that are introducing
Lawrence
them.
Fishburne.
Yeah.
And you know how he dies? He tries to block his face from a bullet with a boombox. Doesn't work.
This is not the Matrix, Lawrence.
But anyway, yeah, the second one is so brutal. It's really hard to watch when they attack the housekeeper and rape her and all that. Then they take the daughter, rape her. She jumps out of a window and gets impaled by a gate. This time though, since they attack him in his house before, like kidnapping his daughter, he knows what they look like, so he tracks them all down.
No, but here's the thing. I don't want to be like one of those, like, you know, those conservative commentators. They're always like, well, if you see people doing things, you might want to imitate them. Like, I really don't want to be one of those people. But I sometimes wonder, watching movies like this, does it make people more prone to vigilantism? Because I think that you notice society becoming more cynical now.
I don't know. Maybe Bernie Getz watched Death Wish. I don't know.
I don't know, but like, there's something about it that like it.
It's a very, in the movies, it's romanticized as, you know, you're definitely the good guy.
Yeah, for sure, because it's a movie, and you know you can frame it manipulatively in that way.
That's where the sequels kind of faltered.
Yeah.
Death Wish 3, 4, and 5, because you're on his side the whole time, and nobody really wants to do shit about it.
Right.
Death Wish 3, he's working for a cop. Like, cops like, blah, blah, blah. You can inform on me, and then they help each other in the end. Death Wish 4 maybe kind of came back to that, but it was still way over the top. I mean, he had a cop after him, and the cop was just like, he starts walking away at the end, and the cop's like, I'll shoot you if you leave. And he's like, do it, you have to. But he lets him walk away. He ends up in witness protection. And he ends up back in New York in witness protection, new name and all that. And Death Wish 5 is still the same thing. Cops are kind of more sympathetic with him. So I think Death Wish 1 and 2 are really the ones where it's like, and it's funny because they get the detective from the first one who's like, you might want to go check this out. I mean, and try to stop him because that's going to affect our image if they say, oh, we let him go and now he's in Los Angeles shooting people.
Yeah.
Because they put two and two together because he's in Los Angeles. People ended up getting shot in Los Angeles. And, this guy had another mugging / assault happen to his family. And it's the same way. He ends up getting away because someone lets him get away. And this time he tracks one of the guys to the mental institute and he kills the guy. The one of the orderlies is just like, yeah, I know who you are. I mean, I'm going to give you the count of 10 before I raise the alarm. Or something like, no, it's like, I'll give you 2 minutes or something.
For some reason, my mind is just going to like, what would happen if there was vigilantism on Wall Street? If you...
Dude, don't give somebody an idea.
I probably shouldn't still be on the...
Ah.
The obscure blog Group 6 has just inspired a spate of killings in New York City. Pierre's young vigilante was inspired by an internet radio show that no one listens to, except this one person.
A podcast. Really, this is just a discussion about vigilantism. I mean, we've gone on several tangents about psychopathy and killing, and now vigilantism.
Why are we in this mood today? I don't know what it is.
I don't know. We're such a downer today. I mean, the last show we were like...
Whale jizz.
I mean, that's going to be a hit. I mean, that's a good one to start with. Whale jizz.
I think
Jesse
so.
Ventura talking about whale jizz. I mean, wow. Jesse, where are you getting all this stuff from? But anyway, I mean, these are meaningful topics to get on.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk deep all we want. I mean, or be funny. It's just either way, it's going to resonate with somebody. I mean, we have some good points. I mean, you've got the best points. I mean, you're a deep thinker.
Well, I probably just think too much. Less a deep thinker.
I think I think too much too. I got to admit though, personally on Death Wish, I kind of in other vigilante movies, I tend to side with the vigilante. I mean, unless you're a parent, you don't, or a husband, or a significant other to somebody, you don't know what you're going to do until that happens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I could never say that I would do this or would never do this. I don't know what I'm made of.
I mean, sometimes, I don't want to say it's always going to end up good for you, but in some cases, you'll end up being the sympathetic one. Here's a true story for you. You ever hear about this guy who killed his son's kidnapper in an airport?
No?
Well, his son had been kidnapped by his karate teacher or something, possibly molested. But they got him back.
Yeah.
And they arrested the guy.
Okay.
And they were processing him through the airport as he's walking by, and this is all caught on tape. Just to see the guy coming through. All of a sudden, you see in the background a guy in a hat digs into his boot, pulls up a gun right up to head, like shoots the guy in the head. In
the airport, like
in the
terminal.
airport. Yeah, and this is like
the most heavily secure place there is.
This isn't modern day. This is like late 80s, early 90s when it was a bit more lax.
Right.
I mean, you can see the guy's hair just.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're like arresting him. Why? And ask him, why, man? Why'd you do this? He's like, well, if it was your son, you probably would have done the same thing. And it ended up being kind of sympathetic to him. All he got was probation.
Right. Yeah.
Can't own a firearm or anything like that. But
Well, I don't know. You see, this is the weird thing. Even though I have to admit that when I watch movies like that, I do have sympathy for the vigilante mostly. I do actually have some sympathy for the cops in this particular case because, like, I would be scared in my fucking mind if somebody was shooting someone in an airport. For that reason alone, like, I would have been a bit more strict, even though I totally understand the way he feels. Like everyone would, even if we haven't been through it ourselves. Like,
yeah, we're not parents yet.
No, we're not. But I mean, like the idea, like I mean, I hate to admit it, maybe, but like I definitely relate to the feeling of just like I cannot believe that people like you exist. Like you disgust me so much. I just want to just. Oh my God.
Oh, there's no doubt you can always have an ideation about it.
Sure.
I mean, there's always that fantasy of everybody's. Especially if you're old-fashioned, somebody's just like, why aren't they shooting this person?
I'm not even old-fashioned. I'm not old-fashioned at all. I'm the most, like, merciful, lax, almost immorally lax person there is. But there's some things that when people do them...
here's the thing. What's worse, giving somebody life in prison where they can rot thinking about what they did, or just killing them?
Killing them's probably more merciful. If they're really that bad, like if they're really that bad, it's like it's just a mercy to put you out of your misery. It's but here's what we're getting back to. It's not the killing that bothers me. It's the vigilantism. It's the fact that no one has any right to take things into their own hands. Otherwise, society would be chaos.
Yeah.
And that's really what bugs me more than anything. Even though I totally understand why that dad did what he did.
Yeah.
I have to say, I wouldn't have like given him the full penalty. But I would have given him a sterner penalty, and I would have even said to him, "Listen, I have some sympathy for you, but you can't go murdering people in cold daylight."
You wouldn't have given him jail time, though, would you?
I don't know if I would have given him jail time. But
I think probation was I think punishment enough.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they were probably pretty angry that the guy didn't get his trial or whatever.
Because did this happen? Like he saw his son getting kidnapped at the airport.
No, this didn't happen.
Because for some reason, that's more sympathetic to me. Like if he sees it happening and he tries to prevent it by shooting them.
No, that's not how it happened. Like I said, this kid had been kidnapped by his karate teacher.
Oh, I see. That's what I thought. But if it were, then
it was the cops that were bringing the guy through the airport, and he came and he knew he was coming, so he was like, I'm going to shoot him.
Right.
I mean, I think this was definitely premeditated.
Right.
A premeditated thing. It wasn't just spur of the moment, oh, this is happening right at this moment. I got to get this guy because my kid's in danger. No, his kid was out of danger, but there was the possibility. One, he was kidnapped. There's a possibility he was molested as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, that's the clincher. I mean,
Most people react to that more strongly than murder. I'm not saying they should, but they do. It's interesting, isn't it? Like if you look at like the thing that gets people's emotions the most angry when it comes to crime is usually child molestation. You won't find too many exceptions to that in our particular culture.
Well, I'm not going to name names, but I've known a few people who have, well, at least told me they've been assaulted or molested.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny. One, some people just don't do anything about it. They let it sit and, you know, then they're in fear.
I find that I mean, well, I
And
get...
then they run into these people and, you know, they're just, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, not to knock anybody, you gotta deal with it your way, but I mean, and I guess this guy who shot the guy really dealt with it in his own way. I mean, that's his kid. I mean, think about what's gonna happen to this kid.
Well, I almost think that it's worse for a parent saying that. Like, a kid doesn't know. It's like, it's gross and it's icky. But with a parent, knowing full well what's going on and understanding it, I think, on a deeper level than the kid does. And I'm not saying that it's not horrible for the kid, but I'm saying, like, imagining your child being molested and
It's real torture.
You need to stare that molester in the face and, like, see that, like, he's being treated leniently. Like, that would be the thing that would bother me. How dare you do this to my child, and yet, like, have the gall to, like, walk through the world. Like, just the and what's worse than that is, like, and it's not just like molesters. It's like people who take from the world and they give nothing back and they have no remorse for it. And again, I'm as lax as it can be, you know, for most people. I probably have to work on my own morals myself. But if you're a molester, if you're a murderer, or if you're a rapist, or if you're a scammer, those are the sorts of people that I just have. Like a big scammer. I'm not talking about someone that, like, sees money lying around and takes it, or even for someone that just has really shady business practices, but I mean somebody that's an outright scammer and just, like, gives nothing back to the world. It's like, for some reason, people like that.
It's kind of like the Robin Hood thing. Like,
yes,
Robin Hood, he stole from the rich, yes, but did he give back? Damn right he did. That was his whole purpose.
But you know the weird thing about scammers that makes them separate is, like, I would never, ever, and most people would be the same way, I would imagine. I could never sympathize with a child molester main character, but I could sympathize with a scammer main character, even though I hate them in real life.
It's funny you bring up sympathizing with a child. Have you seen the movie The Woodsman with Kevin Bacon?
No.
Kevin Bacon plays I mean, I think he was really good in this. He's a pedophile who's on the reform. He's out of jail. He's seeking redemption. He's working a day-to-day job. He meets a girl, and she kind of sees past it. And then his real turning point is when he sees a guy trying to lure a child, and he beats the shit out of him.
Well, you know what? I actually get redemption stories. Like, I find that there definitely is a place for that, because that's not the same thing as, you know, and then some people, you know, they're really hard and say, well, this person doesn't deserve to be redeemed. I think that anyone deserves to be redeemed as long as they're capable of it. The thing that
they have to work on it for himself. I mean,
that like the thing with me is that, like, you don't always trust that these people can change. If they can change, I'd be the first one to say you should change.
That's why,
and I won't hold.
You really need to watch The Woodsman. I mean, you can sit on one side or the other on the issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a little bit less forgiving,
right?
But that movie really makes you think. You know, really, Kevin Bacon did such a good job. I mean, getting into the mindset of this guy. He's really struggling with, you know, his reform. I mean, he lives across from a playground.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean,
and then
this
probably is a setup for him witnessing this other, you know, molester.
You see him corresponding with a little girl, and you can see him just, you know, trying to be good, and then he all of a sudden he's like, "You want to sit on my lap?" And then she says no, and then he's just like, you can see, like, he's fighting hard. And then his turning point for him, I think, and for the audience, is when he sees some other guy trying to lure a child, and he's like, what are you doing? Like, then he beats the crap out of him.
Right. And then that suddenly he sees it from the point of view of the rest of the world, and then understands, you know, and
it's his wife, Kyra Cedric, is in it too.
Yeah.
She plays the woman that falls for him, and it's another perspective of acceptance, I think.
Right.
Some people that he's working with at this wood mill find out that he's a sex offender.
Well, I mean, what would be more difficult for me is someone who is a sex offender, yet they've done all these other good things in their life, and neither negates the other. How do you? I mean, like most people would feel negatively towards them, obviously, because they've done that horrible crime. But like how do you make sense of it in your head? Like
I don't know.
Because we really do have the stereotype of like the sociopathic monster. How often is it true that these people who commit these horrible crimes have no empathy?
I think there's a big movement happening these days. There's these there are pedophiles who don't act and they seek the help.
Sure.
I'm attracted to children. I need help, but I'm not gonna lie about who I am. I mean.
Well, I mean, it probably takes courage to do that, because I would say, there's no one who's hated more in society than pedophiles. So if you have the balls to say, yeah, I'm attracted to kids and I will never act on it, and I want to make sure that this is suppressed. I want to make sure that I never, ever, 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 ever give in to these desires.
I mean,
somebody who does that has courage.
It's clearly like a mental illness.
Absolutely.
I mean, but the thing is,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stigma around mental illness itself that
Right.
needs to be addressed.
Sure.
Big time. Before we get to that, I mean, there's depression. There's a lot of stigma.
Sure.
There's bipolar disorder.
And how often is it that maybe pedophilia is caused by an over-identification with children in and of itself? They've said that often the IQs of pedophiles are lower.
That's kind of like the Michael Jackson thing. Everybody thought he was a pedophile, but the thing is, his growth was so stunted because he was so famous at such a young age, and he was worked hard. He didn't have a real childhood. Maybe even he was a bit mentally neutered. I don't know.
Maybe.
He identified with kids, and he just wanted to be a kid. And I don't personally. I don't know what you think. I'll let you think. What do you think of Michael Jackson? Do you think he did what he was accused of?
Here's my personal intuition. This is out of my ass. I know what happened. I think he was attracted to, kind of like 12-year-old boys. Basically, I do think he was. I think that he had more of an admiration of them and a more of a worship for them than anything else. And I don't think he acted on it. I don't think he acted on it. I think his behavior was absolutely disgusting and inappropriate, but I don't think he actually ever had sex with any of them.
I don't think he did. I think from my mindset and just reading about it more and reading about maybe some of the other, because he took a heavy acne medication as well, which maybe chemically neutered him as well.
Possibly, yes.
Like, took away his manhood.
Oh, sure.
But I also think that stolen childhood and the fact that his father was working them so hard, the Jackson 5, and maybe even a bit of abuse.
Yeah.
Child abuse.
Yeah. I've heard of that. I've heard that.
I think. I wouldn't call it envy, but I think it was like what you said. He admired children for having their innocence. Mm-hmm. I think he just wanted.
He wanted to go back there.
He wanted to have his childhood because
he never finished it.
He grew up way too fast.
Yeah.
He grew up way too fast because he was always working as a musician.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
So, not only do I not think he acted on anything, I don't think he was really attracted to them. I just think he wanted a childhood. I think he wanted the things he missed out on at childhood. Like,
well, I mean, even his plastic surgeries, you almost wonder, was it to make him look more young?
I don't know.
I mean,
some of it was from injuries, I know that, and some of it was from his vitiligo.
Oh, sure, some of it was, but like
maybe,
some of the other ones, like they just
maybe some of that factored in. Yes, I mean, you can say everything you want about him. I don't want to cast judgment because I don't know. I really don't know. None of us knows. I mean, he was acquitted.
Yeah.
I mean, people kept coming.
And
back
I also think that court decision was correct because they didn't know. Because something like that, you really can't.
Do you think it was a money grab by any of these parents, or do you think that there was some fire to go with the smoke?
I do think that it was a money grab, but I also think that it wasn't a totally cynical one. I think the parents really had
maybe they
convinced
had
themselves.
maybe they had something
Yeah.
to think about.
I
maybe.
think that Jackson's behavior was inappropriate. I mean, some of it's just the cynical mistrust of the modern age, absolutely, and I do think that we're too cynical and mistrusting in the modern age. I do think that, but at the same time, if you have a bunch of 12-year-old boys in your bedroom, which is 2 stories tall, yes, as Macaulay Culkin said, that's still inappropriate. I think that there was this admiration and awe that he had, and he just wanted to be surrounded by them, and like. If there's nothing sexual about it, I guess you could argue that's fine. But the way that he did it, it was like there was something about it that fell off to me. I don't think that he actually acted on it because I think that he was so childlike that he almost didn't have much of a sex drive. I actually think that his head was like in some other place.
That goes back to maybe the chemical
Yeah.
neutering, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I read an article about, because you notice as a kid it's pretty much impossible to not get acne.
Sure.
But you see every publicity photo of him as a young boy at the age of puberty and
Yeah.
all that. I mean, his face was clean.
Yes. Oh, everyone. I mean, we've got acne scars and temples, and I still get the odd pimple here and there.
I mean,
I'm 25.
there was some heavy medication going on.
Yeah.
And it still went on until the day he died, obviously, for other things. But, I mean, it's just sad to think about all the things he may have had to go through just to be Michael Jackson.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like the Elvis thing. It was hard to be Elvis,
Yeah. Oh God.
And it's such an odd parallel, given the fact that Elvis was his father-in-law.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Don't you think?
Well, I mean.
I mean, Elvis was a completely different case, but there are some parallels.
No, they're being torn apart by fame. Absolutely.
I mean, maybe Michael Jackson's not dead. Maybe he wanted to get out. I think that's what happened to Elvis.
Well, you're one of the Elvis alive people.
I think I know it's like a lot of conspiracy theorism. It's been given a bad name by skeptics. I mean, conspiracy theorist is such a derogatory term for people.
You are a little like Jesse Ventura.
I know. Well, I am. There's some things I disagree with. Like, why can't you ask questions? Why do people have to yell at you because they believe the other direction?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, you know what I think about humans is that we're all. I'm not saying we're all right or we're all wrong. I'm just saying that we're all using the same primitive techniques to argue something, whether it's true or false. Whether we're right or wrong, even if you say this is morally right, this is morally wrong, even if you believe in moral absolutes and you say that these people are more on the right side than these people, they're still using the same irrational means to argue their positions. And they still come up with the same reasons.
It's a lot of bickering. It's a lot of bitching. I mean, 9/11 truthers get it too. It's like, oh, why do you believe this? This is such a bad thing that happened to us as a nation.
It doesn't make it any less bad.
I know. Why are you but people are always like, why are you questioning what the government has to say?
They nationalize it. They view the government as the people, and they've fallen for that propaganda.
But I mean, there is a lot of questionable. We don't have to go into it, but you can't just sit and say there's not a lot of questionable things that happened with the 9/11 Commission.
Oh, sure.
It happened with the Warren Commission after JFK.
Well, I mean, do you know what? I really do think that there's a very good chance.
And it's not like the government hasn't lied about things. They admitted the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a setup, and just to get Vietnam going.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there's any less of that manipulation that you saw in Nixon's day and in Kennedy's day, even in a more positive direction. I really do, and I think that there is some truth to the truthers. I'm not saying it was the U.S. government. I think at the very least they let it happen.
I think they say the same thing about Pearl Harbor as well. I mean,
yeah,
they did have a bit of knowledge about Pearl Harbor.
How could you not? An operation that big, it's going to leak somehow. But they knew that they wanted an excuse to enter the war. Just like, Alan Turing, they didn't, like you've seen the recent movie Imitation Game. They didn't let the Nazis know that they had broken the code. They let tens of thousands of soldiers die.
It was about the Enigma machine, right?
Yeah, exactly. They let tens of thousands of soldiers die calculatively because they knew that if they gave that away, the war would be dragged out and more people would die.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of, for 9/11 in particular, I mean, I didn't want to go into the whole thing, but there's a lot of questions to be asked about the way the buildings fell. I mean, those buildings weren't really supposed to fall just because a plane hit them.
Yeah.
And you can argue that the gas melted the beams, but that would have to be at immense temperatures. Immense temperatures.
Yeah.
But, you know, not to the main buildings, you can say, you've seen the videos of Building 7, right?
Yes. That's
Does
interesting.
does that not look like a complete demolition inside of its footprint?
Yeah, no, it's they've put in some convincing videos. Now, I'm not an expert in physics or architecture,
not.
so I'm not the one to comment on it, and I remain agnostic on it. I think of all conspiracy theories, that's the one that seems to ring most true to me, just because we know that things like this have happened throughout the history of the 20th century. Why not in the 21st century?
Yeah, like, it's the same reason. There's all these classified documents.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. It's funny how in these days the government says, why should you worry about what the NSA is doing spying on you? I mean, they don't say it, but sheep do. Sheep are like, well, you don't have anything to hide, so why don't you worry? That's not the point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the point. We have the freedom to have our privacy. But why are they allowed to hide everything? Why do they have classified documents?
Or they go to the people.
Protect you from what you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
if it were truly a democracy, I'd be able to walk in. Well, I mean, I know you can do that in Canada, but like, I'd be able to walk in, you know, debate with them, listen with them, talk with them when they're in their little House of Commons, contribute during question period.
I think people should listen more to what people have to say instead of just, especially for any conspiracy theorist or truther or whatever. You know, just listen to their grievances. I mean...
Well, people who think beyond the surface are often more intelligent. It's just sometimes they're wrong. I think it's the followers of conspiracy theories, and I think that obviously they can't all be right, and 95% of it is laughable nonsense. It really is.
I know, it's those people that really give it bad names, but I think it should not justify any of this anger towards those people just because they're asking questions. I mean, they're doing one of a base instincts, which is curiosity.
Yeah.
And wanting to know, wanting the closure. But anyway, back to Elvis, Michael Jackson. Do you think maybe there's a chance these guys said, fuck it, I want out. So
I mean, I would be a little more reticent to conclude that. Just myself.
It's not a conclusion. It's just
or even to entertain the thought of it.
If you've at least seen some of the evidence to point to, and maybe
I'll say this: I can understand the motive for faking somebody's death. I can totally understand why someone would want to do that when they were in that position.
Here, Elvis in particular is a definite right. There's definitely a lot of red flags. I mean, he did set up something with Nixon, saying, "I want to work with the drug enforcement."
Right.
And I don't want to just be honorary. I want to have something to do with that. I believe my connections in music can help in the drug in the drug world. It can help you get anything like that.
Yeah.
I think maybe somebody was on to him. I think not only that, I think he wanted out of Colonel Parker's control. I mean, he was really pigeonholed into touring.
Yeah.
And not maybe letting his health fall by the wayside, and you know, he just lost his marriage. He lost. There was a few movies he really wanted to be in, and Colonel Parker vetoed it. He's like, no.
Interesting.
He wanted to be in A Star Is Born.
Oh yeah, that's right. I heard about that.
He wanted to audition for the role that eventually went to Chris Christopherson.
Right. That was Judy Garland, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Elvis had such potential as an actor that was untapped simply because Colonel Parker wanted to make a quick buck.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Because it was a 50-50 split, really.
Yeah.
For profits. I mean, I think Elvis just wanted to he wanted to, you know, stop the world, let me get off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of evidence to suggest that, including the coffin being so damn heavy because maybe it was carrying a air conditioning system. The fact that the body didn't look real. I mean, dead men don't sweat.
I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough. I should probably look into it before.
Maybe we'll talk about this later. We'll talk about this in another thing. This is definitely
the next time.
I'll get some shit together for you.
Right.
We can look at this together. We can talk about this. I mean, and then we can get into some Jesse. What would Jesse Ventura think about this? That would have been a great.
You know what?
Thing to talk about on the show.
I think we should have him on the next show.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly. We'll see. We'll see.
Quotation marks. Yes, we'll get Jesse Ventura
Right.
on the show.
Okay. Do we have to do this for legal reasons?
I think so. I don't want
Okay.
to say Jesse's coming, but
So someone very much like Jesse is coming, who may or may not be Jesse, and probably isn't. But just imagine he is, for your own sakes.
for your own entertainment. Okay, I'll